So I'm Brian Christian. For those of you that might not know me, I encourage you to like and share these videos. This is going to be part one on the shift series. Sometimes we just have to get shift faced and enter into a place in which we can restore our history, restore our memories. Now, there's been a lot of different inner healing ministries in the past, some good, some not so good. And then, of course, many that administrate inner healing are also seeking healing themselves. And so some and many I've talked to have had a bad experience with inner healing. And so I really don't want to call this inner healing. I really want to call it unveiling wholeness or renewing the mind. And so I just want to encourage you. You can take notes during this time. And this series will be permanently online so that people can refer to it later on. So when I use the term shift, what am I talking about? Well, years ago, the Father gave me a word, and he gave me the word shift. And he said, all right, shift is an acronym. It means sanctifying historical illusions, finding truth. All right. And so this is really what shift is about. And so I'm doing a series called Shift. I had come out of learning about different other ways in which we deal with the mind. One group had a inner healing ministry called Sozo. It's very well known with Bethel Church. Sozo. There was another one back in the day called Cleansing Streams, Elijah House. All of those are very good. I'm going to be taking a similar angle, but I'm also going to be adding my own experience into this. And one of the ones that I went through and spent the most time on was called Theophostic prayer ministry. Theo meaning God, Phos meaning God's light light invading your darkness. And it is now called Transformation Prayer Ministry with Dr. Ed Smith. And I was the poster child for that particular method for many years. But I also found that there's an easier way and a quicker way in certain areas. I was able to take some shortcuts in areas of administrating mind renewal with people. Me personally, my life was changed through going into my history and allowing the Father to restore my memories. Okay. Now, this is not memory therapy in a psychological way like you might have gone to at a secular counselor. There's some similarities, but it is not the same thing. This is Christ outside of time going into your past according to your perspective and changing the way you've seen who you are in events that you have deemed traumatic. Okay. We're going to talk a little bit about that today and how the mind works. And so I'm thinking this is going to be a 4 to 5 part series, and we're starting on that today, and we will see where we go with it. But I believe it's important. I've had many people reach out to me and say, Brian, you need to really do this again. My own wife telling me, it's time. It's trigger season. And it's time for you to teach on this afresh. I've taught on it before, and I continually need to upgrade it as more truth begins to come on the matter, as we begin to spend more time looking into how the mind works and the way in which people react and respond in the midst of triggers. And so I have about close to 7,000 hours under my belt of ministry to others when it comes to the mind. I don't want to say I consider myself a professional counselor, but I definitely consider myself confident and an authority on this subject because of all the time I have spent personally with myself as well as others, as well as the fruit that it's produced with over a 95% success rate of seeing people restored completely without ever having to go back and maintain their walk with God. And that's the goal, isn't it? We have been taught pain management in the church. Ministries have been erected in the church. to take the place where there's been a lack of understanding of the mind. And so we have all these different kinds of ministries that will eventually become obsolete as people come into the renewal of the mind. Some are good ministries, some are simply pain management ministries. And so we want to get beyond the self-help pain management, and we want to get into a place of revelation, understanding how the mind works. So I'm going to read you a scripture in Romans chapter 12 about renewing the mind. In Romans chapter 12, verses 1 through 3, it says, I beseech you, therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that you present your bodies a living sacrifice, holy, acceptable unto God, which is your reasonable service or spiritual worship. Be not conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may prove and know what is the good, perfect, or good, acceptable, and perfect will of God. All right. I also have in front of me the Mirror Bible, and so let's go there and see what it says in the Mirror Bible in chapter 12. So in the Mirror Bible, it says live consistently with who you really are, inspired by the loving kindness of God. My brothers, the most practical expression of worship is to make your bodies available to Him as a living sacrifice. This pleases Him more than any religious routine. He desires to find visible, individual expression in your person. Do not allow current religious traditions to mold you into a pattern of reasoning. Like an inspired artist, give attention to the detail of God's desire to find expression in you. Become acquainted with perfection to accommodate yourself to the delight and good pleasure of Him will transform your thoughts afresh from within. Now, I agree with part of this. I believe here when it's talking about in verse 1 in the Mirror Bible, He desires to find visible individual expression in your person. Now, even though I do believe in our diversity of individuality, I like the King James when it's the first part. It says, I beseech you, therefore, brethren. So He's not talking to an individual. He's talking to every relationship connected to you. And this is what it actually takes. So even though we might go into a church or a ministry to get a inner healing session, there are pros and cons. And I believe in the beginning we should have a session or two, but we should learn how to make that posture in the session a way of life with every interaction with people. Why? Because you can only get so much behind closed doors with a counselor or somebody leading you in inner healing. You're not getting the scenery of the journey and the interaction of the people that is going to make that more of a living reality, and also cause others to enter the conversation of our restoration. So this is why it's important that we can go through this alone in degrees, but ultimately we should be with other people learning this. So I encourage you, sit with the videos with your spouse or with a friend and watch these videos and learn some of the keys and the tools, and then practice on one another. The best way to do it is practice. There's no false expectation. It's just an experimentation that you'll find both parties begin to get restoration in the way in which they perceive themselves and others. It all starts with the way you do perceive yourself, which now affects others. So that's our individual posture. But ultimately, you're not going to be able to just go into your mind by yourself and do it in the beginning. Later on, as you have lived out this posture in every relationship around you, you will find that your mind will automatically go to the source and origin of your pain, and the Father will begin to bring truth into the areas where you have believed lies about yourself. Okay, and so this is something I believe is really important. So when we go back to Romans chapter 12, it is about you being your true, authentic self by the mercies of God, which means mercy has touched your memory, okay? You have got a completely different perspective of who you thought you were. Now, let me talk about a couple of things here before we go a little bit deeper into this, and I'll be referring back to Romans chapter 12. So when you're dealing with the mind and how the mind works, we have to understand that the mind operates on two different sides. It operates on the intellectual reasoning side. We'll call that the dictionary in our mind. That's everything we have learned cognitively through outside sources of teaching and training and books and these kinds of things, Bible studies, so on and so forth. It's usually where most believers claim the will of God. We do a lot of claiming in Christian circles today, and we need to go beyond claiming into decreeing. And we can't decree what we don't believe, but we will claim what we've yet to believe. And so we need to go beyond that. And so there's the dictionary side of your mind, the intellect, and the other side of your mind is the experiential side of your mind, the creative side of your mind. And it is in the creative side of your mind that you actually live from your true belief. Yes, I know we've been taught, don't get caught up in emotionalism, and it's just about faith. It's not about feeling. But yet, the way our minds process truth is through the motion of emotion. Okay, and so experientially, it's what you believe. In other words, if I'm claiming my God shall supply my every need, but tomorrow I lose my job, what am I experiencing when I lose my job? I'm experiencing the sense of fear and loss. And now I'm really trying to start claiming, my God shall supply my every need. My God shall supply my every need. And I'm pressing into prayer out of a place of fear, which is coming from a trigger of what I have believed in a previous time in my life. And therefore, in that place, we get stuck in trying to get our intellect to bring our emotions subject, and we try to subject the rest of us. We call it the self-life. We try to kill that self-life, kill that flesh. We want to call it flesh, when in fact it's actually a sign that there's something out of alignment in your historical view of yourself that is waving its flag saying, wait a minute here, we can't go on to a decree of what the scripture says or what God has said, because back here you truly don't believe it based on your experience. Okay, and so that becomes a red flag, not to repress it, but to actually embrace it. And we are taught the opposite of this in Christian circles. If you have a bad feeling, a bad thought, it's immediately put out as a devil, a demon, a curse, a witch. You committed a sin, and we're taught to repress those things that are behind and press on to that which is ahead. You noticed I used the term repress, and we're taught to do this. And so we need to be able to enter into a place in which we're no longer repressing what is behind, but we're able to forget our version of what is behind us and enter into a completely new view of why we walk through what we walk through, that now can positively affect our lives and the lives of everyone around us presently. I'm the poster child of this, and so I can tell you it works. And this has been my life and my experience, and I know that it will work for you. It might work differently in degrees depending on the season that you are in. We are not always in a season of dealing with renewal of the mind. It's when we're being triggered constantly that we know that we are now in that season. Okay, so that's when we pick these tools up and we begin to learn how to posture ourselves to enter into a place of discerning and being respectful to our emotional side of what we believe. So you have intellectual belief and you have experiential belief. Your experiential belief is where lies reside in your history. And we will call that lie-based thinking. Lie-based thinking is experiential. If I'm walking through a forest, and in this forest I come across a brown crooked thing on the ground, I'm immediately going to jump back and go, snake. But as I look closer, I realize, wow, that's a stick. So my mind goes to the intellectual part of my mind, the dictionary, and it goes into the dictionary under the letter S, and it goes, okay, stick, snake, stick, snake. Okay, it was a stick, it wasn't a snake, but it was close, but peace and calm. All of a sudden, you enter the peace and calm when you realize it was a stick and not a snake. Why? Because your emotions experienced it before your intellect or reasoning caught up. This trigger effect is a knee-jerk reaction. We see this all the time when we're in relationship with people in which we have those moments where we react and we don't understand why we reacted. So we try to intellectually reason, find a way in which we can deal with the problem on the surface, but all we're doing is repressing the problem internally. So if you got strong willpower, you might be able to make it a year or 2 years without that trigger showing itself. And you might think, wow, I've been free from all these things. I'm no longer bound by this. I got a prophetic word where Jesus said I was free. And so I took that, I believed it. I just don't understand where all these things are coming from. And so we're taught these quick fix ideas that only cause us to become offended at other people and then project and make it all about them, rather than deal with the root issue that is going on the inside of us. Okay. So I believe that, as we begin to walk through this journey, we're going to be talking about subjects of today is how the mind works. And we're going to be talking about what is the demonic when it comes to the emotion and the mind. We're going to be talking about different lies we've believed and how and what each lie represents in our life when it comes to categories of lies, so we can identify. We're going to deal with finding the lie, finding the truth, and these are going to be the subjects we're going to be dealing with. Using your environment to renew the mind. This is very important to understand, because as it is right now, many are simply believing that their problem is everybody else's problem. And so we project out and we think it's somebody else, kind of like the tree of knowledge. The woman you gave me, she made me eat it. Oh, the serpent beguiled me, he made me eat it. So it turns into the blame game of projecting outwardly when we're operating in a twisted imagery within our belief system in the way in which we perceive. Now, how do lies get in? Okay. Lies get in because something either happened to me that was wrong. I was either bad things happened to you. Okay. Simple as that. Other people are wounded and they're projecting their wound and they're acting out their wounds. And so bad things happen to me. The flip side of that is the absence of good things. So we're not just dealing with bad things happening, but also the absence of good things. I'll tell you one thing, 98% of the trauma in our life is based in those two aspects, not based in sins you committed. Okay. Most of the sins we commit or operating out of a mistaken identity is actually coming out of the trauma-based thinking in the first place. We're acting out of what we believe about ourselves. If I believe I am worthless, it doesn't matter how much somebody is going to affirm and love me outwardly. If I believe that, I am going to constantly think they have an agenda. There's a string attached. I'm even going to purposefully, maybe not consciously, but subconsciously, I'm going to purposefully react and try to push people away so that I can prove they're the real deal. And so we will cause people to try to jump through all these hoops in which they have to now prove that they can love us effectively. And it's all out of this mistaken identity that's now emanating from our past. Let me give you a few things that renewal of the mind or this ministry is not when it comes to shift. What are we not? Okay. All right. So this is not a cure-all. Okay. You still have issues in life that happen. You can still misunderstand a present situation. So this is not a cure-all. Okay. Triggers are dealing with a situation that no matter how many times it comes, you find yourself in the dump, in a cycle you cannot get out of. All right. But when you're free of a trigger, you can be in front of a situation that you feel the brunt of. You might even get upset, but it doesn't entangle you and put you into a spiral of depression or defeat or make you want to go and, gorge on food or take drugs or drink alcohol and these types of things. Okay. So this is something I believe is going to totally help you when it comes to that, because you got to be able to discern the difference between a trigger and just life events, because life events can hurt you at a level, but it cannot penetrate and twist your identity, while triggers can twist your identity. Okay. All right. Or shall I say lie-based thinking can twist your identity. So the mind works on association of where it's been. So if in a childhood memory, and it doesn't take much, let me tell you, it doesn't even take anything majorly traumatic. Some of you might be watching saying, well, I had a really good childhood. I don't know why I continually feel like the people in my life are going to leave me. Okay. Nothing traumatic happened. Well, it could be very as simple as you drawing a picture for your mom or your dad. And as a child, and you go and you're pulling on your mother's dress, mommy, look at the picture I drew for you. And the phone's ringing and the dog's barking and the roast is burning in the oven and somebody's knocking at the door. And she's like, not right now, I'm busy. Well, a child doesn't hear, not right now, I'm busy. A child hears, mommy doesn't like my picture. Mommy doesn't want what I have. Okay. Now you're dealing with rejection. Okay. Which can also lead to abandonment if there's more than one episode in which mommy ignored me. That can also be beyond rejection into abandonment, especially if you see her walking away at the time that she didn't hear you. Now, children have certain hormones that are withheld in their brain, certain chemicals, until puberty hits. This is where we get the scripture in Proverbs. It says, train a child in the way they shall go, and when they are old, they will not depart from it. Okay. And so when a child is before the age of puberty, their mind cannot comprehend taking responsibility for what's their stuff and allowing other people to take responsibility for them. They cannot differentiate between somebody else's responsibility and their own. That's why when there's divorce in a family, the child blames themselves. So a child will heap upon them everything that is happening around them. That is why we must train them in the way that they shall go. For when they are old, or when they get hair, is the original translation. When they hit puberty, they will not depart from it. So as a child, your character is being formed, especially in the first 4 to 5 years of childhood, in which everything you're absorbing around you, you are taking upon you as you're fully responsible for it. And this is why we see kids always trying to help with everything. They want to help. They want to help because they've already taken responsibility in their mind. And sometimes they help and they end up breaking something or making a mess or putting themselves in danger. And what do? We discipline them. Well, what are we teaching them? That there's something wrong. And they immediately begin to take this into their mind. You must sit down and explain to your kids, parents. You must sit down and explain, all right, this is why we said no to this. And then you must affirm them and let them know that it is not on them, the responsibility that they're putting on themselves. Now, as they get older, what happens is when they hit puberty, and those chemicals are released, the age of accountability, where they can begin to discern what is their fault in a sense, and what is somebody else's, the mind seals itself in that place. And from that point on, their character, that's the lens that they now view their life from, or view their life through, unless somebody comes in and helps them walk through some of the repressed stuff in their history, in their past. Okay, so this is something that I believe will help us. If you've ever heard of the term arrested development is where somebody's emotions have been arrested at a certain stage of growth in their childhood, and it grows no further due to either a split in the mind, repressed memory, or as some would call it, DID, which is dissociated identity disorder, or as some used to call it, MPD, multiple personality disorder, where the mind splits due to trauma and does not come back. Part of the emotions become repressed, or in a sense retarded. They don't grow. How do we see this manifested in an adult's life? It's very simple. They only want that one thing. There's usually obsession, compulsion, addiction, and they go after the one thing. If you're in the yard with your 2-year-old child, and that 2-year-old child has a red ball, and he's playing with the ball in the yard, and you tell your child, all right, play with the ball in the yard, but don't go out in the street. Well, guess what happens when that ball starts going towards the street? They immediately run after it, and they go after it in the street. Why? Because they can only focus at that age on that red ball of what they're obsessed with in that moment. Okay. Now, what happens is that there's a traumatic event around that time. Their emotions stay in that place. So even though intellectually, as an adult, we know the truth of all these things, we find ourselves driven after that one objective. And as a Christian, we can even spiritualize it and become zealous, become ministry driven. We can be driven in trying to change everyone and change everybody in the world and get everybody saved. And it's still coming from the same mindset. It's a broken mindset. So how do we break free from repressing, the past? Well, we've got to face our past. We've got to face our past. And we will talk a little bit later in how to posture from the intellect into what your emotions actually believe. And I believe this is something that, as we can understand this, because most people do not even know what they feel. This is why it's so frustrating. They're going through something. They're reaching out. I don't know why I'm going through this. I don't know why I feel this. I don't know why I reacted this way. Because most people are not in touch with who they are, what they feel. And so we're simply always looking outwardly, trying to find an antidote or a way out of feeling the pain without actually dealing with the pain. And so that's what we want to look at, okay? So since our mind works on association of where it's been, you don't really consciously think about sitting in a chair. Why? Because you've done it before. You don't consciously think about walking through a doorway because you've done it before. It's an automatic response. You open the door, you walk through, you come in, you sit down. You're not even conscious of it because your mind is operating out of where it's been. Now, the problem is when our mind and parts of our mind are stuck in our history, there are parts of our mind and emotions that are not in the present. And so we're sitting there trying to experience love or trying to experience God and trying to have a healthy relationship with the people around us, but we can't enter that healthy relationship because there's a part of us that is absent in our emotions and in our mind that is stuck back here that cannot get free from the past. I remember doing a session with people with a specific lady, and this lady, she really had a hard time sexually in the bedroom with her husband, and it was causing all kind of strife in the marriage. It was also triggering his rejection issues as well from being previously wounded by women in the past. And so this person came to me and I said, well, give me a scenario how this trigger is manifesting itself in your present experience. And she says, well, I'm doing dishes and my husband will come up and he'll wrap his arms around me, and I just feel claustrophobic, and I know he's wanting to love me, and I just can't do it. And I feel the same way when we go to make love. I feel claustrophobic. I just got to get away, and I just push him away, and I can't breathe, and I can't breathe. Well, once we went into that and we used that present situation as the beginning place to feel the pain, and then ask the Father to take her back to that memory, she was reminded of a time when she was molested by a family member out in the barn, and she was pushed down on gravel, and he forced himself on her, and she could feel the gravel going into her back, and she felt claustrophobic. See, she got away from there. She's no longer being raped in the barn. Okay, she escaped. It's been 25 years, but she's still living as though it's presently happening, even though it's not. There are many people that are still stuck, and they cannot associate their present situation with their history. They just simply think the person in their life right now is trying to hurt them, is not being sensitive to them, is, and these kinds of things. And so once we dealt with that, all she had to realize, and this is amazing, all Jesus had to do was come into her pain in that place and say, you made it. You're not there anymore. It's not enough to talk to somebody intellectually. It's got to be in the experience of the trauma, in the emotion. And she was set free completely. And now I think they even have more kids now. All right. Everything worked out great for them. And so realize this. Your present situation is not the source or origin of your pain. It is an echo of the past. All right. Your present situation is targeting your history so that you can be whole from your past. Okay. So the moment we understand that our present situation is not the threat, it is simply confronting what we have believed is a threat from a subconscious level. Now we can posture ourselves, let down our walls, no longer try to protect ourselves from the loved ones around us, and we can use what they are even projecting of their own woundedness to tap in and to restore our own history. This is a beautiful thing, because this will help us to stop retaliating, stop judging, stop being offended, and enter into a place in which all things are working together for good to those who love God, to those who are called according to his purpose. So this is something that I believe is what we need. It's what we need today. We are in a season right now of triggers. Many are going through it. I have been doing some sessions on the side with some people and seeing tremendous results, and it's a beautiful thing. All right. So we have two scriptures. Paul says, forget that which is behind. Press on to that which is ahead. Moses is told by God to tell the children of Israel to remember that they were delivered out of Egypt. All right. So we got one saying, forgetting what is behind, and another saying, remember where you were delivered from. The key here is knowing you've been delivered from the Egypt of your own perception long enough to be able to forget your past from the wrong perspective and enter into a place of recognizing that your history can no longer harm you. You're no longer stuck in it, and everything you walk through can now be utilized for your sake and for the sake of others that might also be struggling in that place. Okay, and so think about there's some people they don't. There was a time I was scared of spiders. My wife is still scared of spiders. Now, if I took a rubber spider and would put it on her shoulder and she didn't know it was a rubber spider, guess what her reaction would be? She'd flip out and she would think it was a real spider. Well, once she realized it was a rubber spider, her emotions would again return to peace and calm. So what am I saying here? What I'm saying is there's a lot of rubber spiders in our lives that we are taking as real things right now, but they're They're really rubber spiders, and they're coming from our past experience. All right. So, since your present situation is not the source and origin of your pain, what's the next thing that can block us? What's the next principle that can block us from allowing our present situation to deal with our pain? And that is, there's another lie we have believed. And that lie is, well, I can't be healed until my spouse is healed, or until my pastor is healed, or I can't really go forward until so-and-so gets their stuff together. That is a lie. Your restoration is not dependent upon what anybody else does. In fact, you can use what you cannot control concerning what other people do to benefit you if you are triggered by it. See, it doesn't matter if they're mean to you, okay? What matters is that you can take that meanness that has hit your trigger and restore your history through their meanness. That's why it says in the Psalms, the wrath of man shall praise him, okay? And so we can't control others, all right? We can move our space from them, and I think many a times that's what we try to do. We take our present situation as a threat to our spirituality when it's really removing the threat that has threatened our spirituality by confronting our history, okay? And so the mind is operating at these levels. Your mind has stored emotion in your history, okay? Stored emotion. All right? A third principle that will help us understand this is that you cannot talk yourself out of the lies you believed, and neither can anybody else. We've been doing this the whole time. We're trying to claim the scriptures. We're trying to claim the Bible, and we're trying to talk ourselves out of the lies we believe, because, wait, I got saved, I'm born from above, I'm born again, whatever terminology, awakened, you want to use. And in that awakening, now my past is over, it's now begun, and it's great. Isn't that honeymoon phase amazing? We're just like on cloud nine. God is so good. Everything we pray, God is answering. Everything is great. And then all of a sudden, we start to deal with some past feelings. They start to come up. So what does usually the pastor tell us? Well, that's just sin. You must have given a foothold to the devil. You must have sin in your life. No, it's not really based on that. What it basically means is you haven't dealt with your history. See, we want to think that before we were awakened, let's just do away with that life. God doesn't want to do away with your past where you thought it was useless. He wants to make even that new. He wants to come in and he wants to make all of it new. Think about this paralleled with the disciples. Jesus is telling them all these things about the kingdom. He's pretty much revealing he's the Christ, but they can't see it, okay? And so they're journeying with him in a life before they're awakened. But the moment they enter into that upper room and they're beginning to get awakened through the baptism and through all of that, they're now relating back, going, this is what he meant when he said this. This is what Jesus was saying back here. So they were able to now see Jesus walking in their past before their eyes were open. And I think the same goes for us. God has been with us since the beginning, even before the beginning. All right. And in the beginning of our human experience, whether we were awake or asleep, Christ has been with us. Christ has been in us. It's at the appointed time that Christ is revealed in me, Paul says. Okay. And so in that place, but where we haven't seen it in that place, we don't believe God is with us. So God is now absent in this situation where he didn't help me. God didn't defend me here. God allowed this here. And what we have to understand is we're now seeing these lies of separation that are going to begin to emanate up through our present journey of believing we're not separated anymore, because now I'm awakened. But what about back here? So it's time for God to make all things new in your history. So no matter how much you try to talk yourself out of the lie, it will only be from an intellectual place. In fact, our mind will justify that intellectual place. All right? There's a part of your mind that says, Lord, I'm just ready to be healed. That's the part of your mind that's realized, I need some healing, but I don't know where it's coming from. I can't figure out what's my issue, because we're looking outwardly and we're trying to figure out who is our issue rather than the conclusion of my life being my issue. All right. So we cry out and we say that, but another part of our mind is saying, I ain't going there. Nope. Been there before. I'm not allowing myself to feel that pain. I'm not allowing myself to be wounded anymore. I've got to protect myself because God wasn't in that place to protect me. So that part of your mind back there that's not even conscious anymore, as you stand and you're believing God for this, and you're believing for this job to open up, or you're opening your heart up to somebody that you believe is your friend, and all of a sudden they walk away and you feel wounded and broken. They didn't wound you. They just exposed this other stuff back here. Why? Because your mind operates on the association of where it's been, not on the present interaction of where it's at. Now, eventually, when the mind renews, you're now constantly in the present, and you'll find that you're encountering all kinds of things in God. You're getting all kinds of revelation that you didn't get before, because part of your mind was distracted over here, and you were having a double conversation inside, and there was too many voices talking, voices of past conclusion, that was interrupting and stifling present revelation and present encounters that you are constantly in but not aware of. Okay? And so this will help you. All right. So since my present situation is not the source of my pain, it's an echo of the past, and I can't talk myself out of it, in my own mind, and neither can anybody else. And I don't have to wait for everybody around me to get healed before I am restored. Now we're starting to get somewhere. We're starting to come into the place in which all of the outward protections consciously that are now echoing from our history that is justifying why I can't be free, we're now starting to dismantle these lies, the surface lies, the surface things. And we're entering into a place in which we can now begin to gaze in and see the areas where we've been holding debts against ourselves and others, against God, and misunderstanding our trauma of the past. Okay. Let's go back here to Romans chapter 12 again. And I want to kind of sum it up, because I'm not going to have these lessons be too long, 45 minutes to an hour for each lesson. And in Romans chapter 12 again, I beseech you, therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that you present your bodies a living sacrifice, wholly acceptable unto God, which is your reasonable service or spiritual worship. Let me tell you, when the mind is ready to come into restoration, you will most likely have come into contact with other people who have been where you're at and maybe are a little ahead of you, and they can affirm you. This is the beginning of it. See, until you have a physical person in front of you that's now affirming you and has walked in your shoes, you're not going to be able to access the pain of a physical person who abused you and betrayed you and left you in your pain. You need a repeat of another person in your life that is now bringing the opposite of what the previous person traumatized you in. Okay? This is the beginning of us visually and physically beginning to recognize mercy. Mercy. See, we can claim all day long, God is merciful. He loves me. He forgave me. He didn't send me to hell. Okay? And of course, that in and of itself is a twisted image of what we've been taught in religion today. All right? He ain't going to send you to hell, and he never will. And so the point is we get this twisted imagery, and we claim mercy out of a place of God kind of just putting up with us, or, well, I'll save you, because my son died, but that's about it. And so we settle for that because of our lack of understanding who we truly are, and that sense of unworthiness that wants to call God perfect in his behavior to be angry and wrathful and disappointed with you. And so when we're in a twisted image and we're living out of the perspective of trauma, we will preach a angry, wrathful God. We will preach conditional love. We will believe that that's perfect love, and it's not perfect love. So we need a revelation of the mercy of God that is now coming from God through other people to show us a level of mercy that now begins the process of touching our human experience with that mercy, not just our spirit, okay? It says that you present your bodies a living sacrifice. This is relationship with people. So really, this chapter is not about you sitting by yourself reading the scriptures and thinking you're renewing the mind, when in fact, all you're doing is piling up scriptures and even spiritual encounters over the broken emotions and actually repressing it by using spiritual things as well as the Bible to protect yourself from your own restoration, okay? I've ran into people several times. They've called me and said, brother, I just need a word. I just need some prayer. And can you just pray for me? I'm going through this, this, and this. And I know that their present situation is divinely set up to deal with their past conclusion, that is trauma, the lie-based thinking. And I give them a choice. I can pray for you. You're going to feel good for about a week, and then you're going to be right back in it. Or we can go to the pain and to the source of where this is coming from, and we can deal with it once and for all, and your Christianity can become maintenance free. And so we need to really deal with those root issues and not avoid them. And we're gonna talk about ways in which that comes in later. But let me continue to read on. Verse 2, be not conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. This is not a better do it or else. It's actually a promise that when you're in this place of allowing other people to penetrate the walls of your heart in that mercy, that what's going to happen is you're not going to be conformed to this world anymore. It's just the effect of verse 1, rather than a step I've got to take to make sure I'm, right with God or something. Okay. But be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may know what is the good, acceptable, and perfect will of God, or as it says here, prove. In other words, it doesn't mean anything to me for me to try to prove myself to God. What really enables me to stop striving is where God has proved himself to me. And that proof is usually in the midst of opposites in our life that is now pushing on that trigger. And so what do we do many a times? We pray against it. We run from it. The Lord didn't lead me there. That ain't God. We run from people that trigger us because we think they're attacking us. And very well, out of their own wounds, they very well might be attacking you. But do you really want to run from that? If you've ran and you've ran and you've ran, and no matter where you run, you keep coming across the same thing, then that is your mindset being confronted, and that's a clue. You need to stop running, put yourself there, and choose, I ain't running again. I'm staying here until the Father confronts this belief system and goes in and shows me how loved I actually really am. Okay. So I hope that this message has helped you. I hope I stayed on track and that you were able to follow how the mind operates and how we perceive and how we even project our stuff on others. But what's amazing is all of that can be used. We don't have to tell people, don't be yourself. We don't have to tell people, repress your emotion. People can let it fly, and when it hits you, you can now receive that for your own restoration, rather than feeling like you're out of control, or you have to move your space, or you have to do something special to get God to do something on your behalf. I guarantee you, God is in all of it, working for you a far more eternal weight of glory. So stay tuned for, and I'm going to try to do these weekly, maybe even a couple of weeks or a couple of times a week, depending on how much time we have as we're traveling and doing conferences as well. But I am looking forward to seeing you next time as we bring lesson 2 on the Shift series, Sanctifying Historical Illusions and Finding Truth. You can also visit our website at www.foggm.org. If you would like to make a donation to our ministry, you can do it there. You will be able to find this video on Facebook, YouTube, and on our podcast, which is the app Podbean. Just go to Podbean, download it for free. Father of Glory Global Ministries. Add us and hit notifications, and you will be getting all the audio teachings. God bless you, and have a wonderful rest of your afternoon. Bye-bye for now.